And thank you very much indeed for listening to another Gaslec podcast. This is also a video podcast. So this is our very first video podcast. So if you're just listening on audio only, it might be a little bit difficult to follow along with this one. But I'm just playing around with the technologies of recording it on video and recording the sound on the podcast machine. So hopefully this will all work out okay. So apologies if the sound's in and out a little bit. I've just got the microphone just to the side, but I'm going to try my best, and fingers crossed, there we go, it all comes out okay. So this week's episode, I'm going to show you and explain a couple of things that you'll have possibly on your heating system at home, why we have it, where they need to go, and function they sort of do really. So first things first, been downstairs, got a couple of bits. This is the working office, so you'll see tea and coffee and squash and stuff on the back there, so please ignore all of that. So magnetic filters. So these go on your heating system. So the function of these is that all radiators, apart from the alley ones, are made of steel. So your traditional radiators. So with the, obviously the steel is submerged in water, and we know what happens with steel in water, they rust and corrode. So we try to add the chemicals to the system to bring down the oxygen level of the water to slow down the corrosion process. But inevitably it does happen. So what we need to do is try and make sure that any bits that do fly around, we call them up like iron oxide or heavy deposits, get caught before they go into the boiler, so it's on the return side. So we have these. Really like these filters, good value for money, all metal, good sets of valves on the top there, top and bottom as they come in. Only downside, they're quite long, so when you sort of look at that, that's getting on for probably about sort of 8 inches or so coming through. So there's a little directional arrow on it as well. But yeah, if you've got the space for them, very good little filter. So how they work. So on the top here is the magnet, and this magnet is in what we call dry pocket. So that is just your everyday sort of rare earth magnet, so a very strong magnet, and sits inside that dry pocket. So you can take this out while your heating system's running, but I wouldn't recommend it though, because anything that's caught up on the sleeve on the inside now will be going into your heating system. So always leave these in. So what we do when we come to service the boilers, we've got two options really. We can either just turn the valves off, top and bottom, and then we can then take the filter out, take the magnet out, and then from the bottom here we have a drain, so we can then undo the drain, and then we have a valve on there. We open the valve, and then all the heavy bits come down from the top. And then what I normally do is just open the valve up, get a bit of central heating water just to push out any of the sludgy bits that are on the inside. So if I just whip this open, and then you can see inside there, that is that sleeve on there. So if we take the magnet out, it's still there. So all of the heavy deposits stick to that on that inside bit there. Some other manufacturers, they'll have like a mesh, but it's normally quite big holes on the mesh. They don't usually catch the smaller bits. So the big bits, the big flakes, it will. Yeah, that relies on just sticking onto there. So inside, the waterways will come in one way, come around the outside, go via the filter, and then sort of go back in through the centre. And then that just makes sure all the return water passes through the filter. And then if we have to clean that out, we then just screw it back on, only hand tight, so no need to be swinging off it. And then just do them up and then open the valves up. Sometimes we can use this as a dosing point, so we can turn it upside down while it's empty, because we just emptied it all out. And we can open this valve up, and we can tip central heating chemicals, excuse me, straight in from the top. So we tip it in, and then we turn it back off, and then we can rotate it back round again. So really good little place for a little dosing point as well. It won't take a whole bottle of chemical, so you normally have to do this in 2 passes. So you'd do that, open it up, let it pump around for a minute, then all the chemical's gone into the heating system, and then do exactly the same, empty it out, turn it around, pop it back in the top. But it's a really easy way to dose up a heating system, or to take sample points from as well if you're doing some sample testing for your central heating system. So that is a magnetic filter. Different shapes, different sizes. Some you get very small. They get angled valves coming off. Some have like offset angles, so they don't come up straight like so. But in most circumstances, these filters, this design, very good. I like them. Metal nuts, metal threads, fantastic longevity. All right, so I'll pop that down over there. So next thing I've got here is what we call shock arrestor. So a shock arrestor, so almost all houses now, we've got water meters. So in the water meter in your street, you'll have the water meter, but built into that body is a non-return valve. So that stops water from your house being passed back to your neighbours, long and short. So there's any contaminants or any nasties that could be passed back for whatever reason. A central heating boiler that's gone wrong is now putting central heating water down the cold main at pressure. That could in theory enter the drinking water cycle, into the drinking water system, sorry, and then affect all your neighbours. So they all have non-return valves. So as soon as the water comes into your house by your water meter, that's it. It's now between you and the outlets. From the meter to the outlets, i.e. the taps in your house, or the bits and pieces, your showers, baths. So we have a lot of ceramic disc quarter turn taps now. So when we turn these on and off, the old-fashioned taps where you wound them about 20 turns all the way down to turn them off, and basically you had a rubber that will come down onto a seat, and it will just slowly then seal the tap off, and then when you open them up, they just open the tap up gently. So those old systems, the pressure was sort of squeezed off gently and then reapplied gently because of the speed that you could physically turn the tap. Now we have ceramic discs, and basically they work on like a V. And so the bolt will pass through there, and then no, it won't. So little quarter turns, and it just opens and shuts, but very, very quickly. So then what happens is we get what we call water hammer, like the pressure builds up very, very quickly, and you'll get through your pipes and through the system like a judder. Sometimes you can hear it like a rrr, and it'll rattle pipes, and it'll send like a shock wave through your system for your cold water main system. Now inside the boilers, for whatever reason, they like to use a lot of plastic fittings. So now boiler manufacturers, because this shock can actually cause fractures into the boiler components, now they want us to use shock arresters. So they save a penny, and then we have to then fit other bits to protect the boilers because they're not using brass or any other superior products. But doesn't matter. That's not my argument really. So shock arresters. So this is what they sort of look like. They can look like a stick. Apologies for rubbing my nose, got a bit of hay fever this time of year. And it's got a Strada valve, exactly the same as what you have in your car tyres. So on here, it's pre-charged to 3.5 bar. So this basically is like a rubber bag full of air. So this goes onto a T, so your cold water pressure just pushes against this. You can't really see it. It's like a little black bag in there, a rubber bag. And then the water pressure pushes against it, and any shock waves has got somewhere to go. So it's basically an expansion vessel, but we call them shock arresters when they're this sort of size, about the size of a cricket ball really, so not too big. And they're pre-charged with air. This one's pre-charged to 3.5 bar. And if we try this, you can hear the air in it. So we always double check them anyway, just to make sure they are full of air before we fit them. But yeah, so just full of air, and then that takes the shock out of your cold main, and it protects the components in your boilers that are all made of plastic. So another thing we have on the cold main is we have something called a limescale filter. So limescale particles, chalk or whatever you want to call it, comes in from your cold water main. So here in the southeast, we have an exceedingly high count on the water hardness. Excuse me. That's why we have a lot of water softeners to cut down and to filterize out the limescale to make it softer, water softer. So on combi boilers, the manufacturers insist not so much on limescale filters. Water softeners. Alley heat exchangers don't like water softeners going around the heating system. I don't like it. Stainless steel, absolutely fine. Personally, I've got one at home, and I've got an alley heat exchanger boiler, and I've never had any problems with it. But the boiler manufacturers will always say that it cannot be filled, the system can't be filled up or topped up from hard water, from artificially softened water. So if you live right up on top of Scotland, absolutely fine, you've got nice clear water. So we have to fit these things, shock arresters. Shock arresters, that was the last one. Limescale filters. So a limescale filter, what is it? Basically, it's a tube, and this has got a little magnet inside. You can sort of see through it there-ish coming through. It's just a magnet. and the water passes straight through it. That's all it does. But apparently what the science does, it gets the limescale particles and it magnetizes them and makes them all straight, because apparently as they're coming through, oh, it's rolling about, sorry. As they come through, they're all sticky, and they'll coming through and they'll try and stick to this and stick to that. And the heat exchangers, the plate heat exchangers, and then all the water components before it sort of passes through the boiler. So what it does, it magnetizes them and makes them straight. So then they pass through and they don't stick. So in theory, you end up bathing it and drinking in it instead, rather than it sticking to the components. But it's supposed to give the boilers a lot more longevity. So it's a requirement for all boiler manufacturers. We've got to fit these limescale filters. So you'll see it, and you'll probably have your shock arrestor will be above it or below it. Doesn't really matter which way around it goes, but and then that just goes in and protects the system there. So yeah, fantastic little bits of kit, really. So another thing you might see if you've got a unvented water cylinder is something we call combination valves or multi-valves. So when your cold main comes up to your water cylinder that's unvented, so not your vented type where you've got the tanks in the loft, you're unvented when you've got no tanks. So we end up having this thing called a combination valve or a multi-valve. So this one I've just found downstairs. So it's got an arrow on it and down there on the bottom. So the cold mains will come up this way. As you can see, it doesn't pass all the way through. It hits that little stop there. And this piece here is a pressure reducing valve. So predominantly on new estates, we have brand new water pipes. So we'll have maybe 150, 200 mil round water main feeding the whole new estate. So we got fantastic water flow and fantastic water pressure for all your new properties. Older properties where I live up on top of Gillingham, we tend to be on, they've replaced it in the street, and I'll replace my water pipe from the water meter onwards in plastic, so I've got a lot better. But there's still a lot of iron water pipe out there, so that starts rusting through and starts reducing. So in new builds, this is more of an important thing to have, but all the cylinder manufacturers will insist that one of these are fitted. So what do we have? So this will limit the water pressure to 3 bar. So whatever it comes in at, so if it comes in at 2, it'll only pass out at 2, but if it comes in at 4, this will limit it at 4 bar, okay? So as it passes through, this here is called a balanced outlet. Sometimes these are capped off. So if you've got a shower and that's on to cold mains going into the shower, being like a mixer shower, and that's potentially could go up to 3, 4, 5 bar of pressure. As it comes out of here, which goes off to your hot water cylinder, it will only be at 3 bar of pressure. So now we've got a pressure difference. If it's coming in at 2, comes out at 2, comes out at 2, doesn't matter. But if we've got an issue where we've got some really high water pressures, potentially at the bottom of a hill because of gravity as well, all the pumping stations pump, but that can also increase water pressure. We have this balanced outlet. So typically from here, we'd then take that cold off and then feed the other sort of sanitary products, really, your baths and your showers. Not so much on your basins, because that's just a silly little tap, and your toilet doesn't really matter, and your kitchen sink, not really, be honest, but your big water outlets, and that's what really makes a difference. So this big red thing on here, it has got written 6 bar. It's going in and out of focus. So this is what we call pressure release valve. So if this does fail and it does suddenly increase massive amounts of pressure, then obviously we are then in theory in danger of damaging your hot water system. And the cylinders will have another one of these pressures, but with temperature as well on it, as well as a secondary safety device, normally around 9 bar, 8 or 9 bar, but just in case this does fail. But what we don't want to do is have a hot cylinder full of hot water and it catastrophically fails through pressure. Goodness knows what else, and God forbid it happens, and lots of water at 80 degrees passes through a ceiling, and whatever is underneath could really be damaged and hurt. So this here, so if this does fail at 3 bar, obviously got a little adjuster screw on this one. This does fail at 3 bar. At 6, this will open, and basically it will take the water pressure out, and that's called the pressure release valve, or PRV, and it will just take it away. And these are very common in Combi boilers, a version of these. So the pressure goes too high, it just blows it straight out, rated at different pressures. This one, obviously, it's made to go into this fitting, so It's got like a standard 1/2 inch out, but it's got like a quirky little fitting to go in, and this locator pin that just holds it in. And then from the cylinder, we then just have this coming out to the hot water cylinder. And then that just the cold feed goes in, and normally at the bottom, and then the hot comes out at the top. So that's that taken care of. And this black nut here, some people will take that off and put the expansion vessel on for your hot water cylinder. It always goes on the cold side, expansion vessels on hot water cylinders, never on the hot side. So I've seen it before where they come off on the hot and they fit the expansion. It's got to be on the cold side, it can't be on the hot. So that's a place where you can connect it to, because in theory that is off the hot side, on the cold side, sorry. And if you look into there, you can also see a non-return valve, that white thing there. And if you look round carefully, you can actually see that that will actually go around to this part here. So it's after the non-return valve. So once again, this stops water passing the pressure, because remember, water will expand 4% at boiling, so in its volume. So as your water gets hotter, it starts expanding. As it expands, it's going to start pushing down on here. So there's a non-return valve into there, and that stops it passing back down through for your hot water, because it will try and backfeed. And then that's why we can take the expansion vessel off that, because it's connected before that. We couldn't take your expansion vessel off this side because it's before the non-return valve, and it'd be completely pointless. And it will, the PRV on the boiler, on the cylinder, sorry, that will open up, and that will then discharge everywhere. So yeah, so there's a couple of bits there that we'd like to fit. So fingers crossed this video podcast works, our very, very first one. So hopefully the sound quality is okay. Hopefully my explanation for things have come through okay. I keep looking at myself on the camera and not looking at myself in the actual, sorry, I look on my phone, but not actually looking at the camera on top of my phone. So hopefully this not too off-putting for most people. But thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for all your support. All the time you're listening, I'll see the little figures go up, which is absolutely amazing. I really, really enjoy it. I'm coming on as a person. Hopefully I can get some information to you guys as well. So if we can ever help with anything, plumbing and heating, we've now got an electrician on board doing some electricals. So if we can ever work, any of that sort of work in your own home, offices, anywhere you work as well. So if we can ever help, give us a ring. Take care, guys.